You drop your phone from waist height, just 3 feet, and the screen explodes into a spider web of cracks. Meanwhile, your keys have been jangling against that same screen in your pocket for months without leaving a single scratch. Here's what drives people crazy. It feels like phone screens are getting worse, not better. Every year, Apple and Samsung brag about their newest, toughest glass, ceramic shield. Gorilla Glass Victus. These names sound like they could stop a bullet, but your screen still shatters when it falls off your nightstand. So what's actually going on? Are phone companies just lying to us? Are they making screens fragile on purpose so we have to buy more phones? The answer is way more interesting than that. And once you understand it, you'll never look at your phone screen the same way again. Because it turns out, the thing that saves your screen from your keys is the exact same thing that makes it shatter when you drop it. It's not a flaw, it's physics. And it's a choice that engineers make every single day. A choice between two things you desperately want but can't have at the same time. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to understand why the perfect phone screen is physically impossible, and why the screen you have right now is probably doing exactly what it was designed to do, even when it cracks. Here's what nobody tells you about phone screens. Every single one is caught in an impossible trade-off. You want a screen that never scratches. You also want a screen that never cracks. But material science says you can't have both. Think about it this way. You pull your phone out of your pocket 100 times a day. Your keys scrape against it, coins rub on it. Sand from the beach gets in there. And somehow, most of the time, your screen stays perfectly smooth, no scratches, clear as day one. That's not an accident. That's because your phone screen is incredibly hard. Hard in the material science sense, which means it resists scratches and abrasions. It's harder than steel, harder than your keys, harder than most things you'll encounter in daily life. But here's the thing that might shock you. That same hardness, the thing protecting your screen from scratches, is exactly what makes it shatter like a car window when you drop it. Because in material science, hardness and flexibility are enemies. The harder something gets, the more brittle it becomes. The more it resists scratches, the less it can handle impacts. Picture this scenario. You're at Starbucks, phone's on the table, you reach for your coffee, and your elbow knocks your phone onto the tile floor. 3 feet. That's it. But your screen explodes. Meanwhile, you've had this phone for 8 months, and despite being in your pocket with your keys every single day, there's not a scratch on it. Everyone tells you to get a screen protector, get a better case, be more careful. But that's not what actually matters here. What really matters is that your phone screen is made of a material that had to choose between surviving your pocket and surviving your floor. And the engineers chose your pocket, and this matters because you're walking around thinking your phone is protected by this advanced space-age glass. Gorilla Glass. Ceramic shield. It sounds indestructible. But that glass isn't designed to be indestructible. It's designed to be hard. And there's a massive difference, one that costs Americans something like $8 billion a year in cracked screens. It's not just about the money you spend on repairs. It's about understanding that the screen you think is failing you is actually doing exactly what it was optimized to do. And once you know what it's optimized for, you'll understand why it fails the way it does. Here's what I call the hardness trap. Your phone screen is made of glass, but not the glass in your windows, not the glass in your drinking cups. This is aluminosilicate glass, engineered specifically to be as hard as possible while still being transparent. Companies like Corning spend billions developing it. And why do they focus on hardness? Because that's what people complain about most. You don't take your phone to the Apple store because it cracked. You live with that. You put a case on it, you deal with it. But scratches drive people absolutely crazy because you see them every single time you look at your phone. Think about when you're scrolling through Instagram and sunlight hits your screen at just the right angle. Every tiny scratch lights up. It's like looking at your phone through a dirty window. That feeling makes people want to throw their phone in the trash and buy a new one. So phone companies optimize for hardness. They make screens that laugh at your keys. But here's what happens at a molecular level when you make glass harder. You're basically packing the molecules tighter together. You're creating a structure that doesn't want to move or deform. And that's perfect for resisting scratches. When your key drags across the screen, the molecules are so tightly packed that they don't budge. The key slides right off, no scratch. But when you drop your phone, you need the opposite property. You need the molecules to absorb energy by moving and deforming. You need flexibility. You need the material to bend without breaking, to spread the impact force out over time and space. But you can't do that if your molecules are locked in a super tight formation. So the glass doesn't bend, it shatters. This matters because every single time you see a cracked screen, you're not looking at a defect. You're looking at the consequence of a deliberate choice. The engineers at Corning and Apple didn't fail to make unbreakable glass. They chose scratch resistance over impact resistance. And they made that choice because that's what the data told them people care about more. Now, this next pattern is particularly sneaky because it tricks you into thinking progress isn't happening. Every year, phone companies announce their new glass is tougher than ever. Gorilla Glass 5, then 6, then Victus, then Victus 2. Each one survives higher drops in their lab tests. And that's actually true. The glass is getting better. But here's where it gets interesting. Better doesn't mean solving the trade-off. It means optimizing the trade-off differently. Gorilla Glass Victus can survive a 6-foot drop onto rough surfaces in Corning's tests. That's twice as high as the previous generation. Sounds amazing, right? But look at what they're not telling you. That drop test is onto rough surfaces at specific angles under controlled conditions. Your phone doesn't drop in controlled conditions. It drops when you're pulling it out of your pocket, and it clips your jacket zipper and helicopters through the air and lands corner first on concrete at the worst possible angle. And even more importantly, that improved drop performance came with a trade-off. Victus is slightly less hard than some earlier versions of Gorilla Glass. It scratches at level 6 on the Mohs scale instead of closer to 7. Most people will never notice that difference. But it's there. They gave up a tiny bit of scratch resistance to gain impact resistance. Here's what makes this even more surprising. There's actually a material that doesn't shatter when you drop it. Plastic. You could make a phone screen out of plastic and it would never crack. Drop it off a building, run over it with a car, the screen survives. So why don't we do that? Because plastic is soft, incredibly soft compared to glass. It scratches if you look at it wrong. Your fingernail can scratch it. Put it in your pocket with your keys for one day and it'll look like you attacked it with sandpaper. In fact, some of the very first smartphones had plastic screens. People hated them. Within weeks, the screens were so scratched up you could barely see through them. It was like looking at your phone through frosted glass. So the industry moved to glass, harder glass, glass that could survive your pocket. And in doing so, they created screens that can't survive your floor. This connects to something even deeper about how materials work. There's this concept in materials science called the strength-ductility trade-off. Ductility is basically a fancy word for how much a material can deform before it breaks. Metals are ductile. You can bend a paperclip and it doesn't snap. Glass has almost zero ductility. It doesn't bend. It breaks. And you can't engineer your way around this at a fundamental level. It's not a technology problem. It's a physics problem. The molecular structures that create hardness and the molecular structures that create ductility are incompatible. You're asking the same material to be two opposite things at once. Your brain does this because humans are really bad at understanding trade-offs. We want the best of everything. The fastest car that's also the safest and the cheapest. The healthiest food that's also the most delicious and the quickest to make. Our brains don't like accepting that we can't have it all. Back when we were hunting and gathering, this actually made sense. There weren't that many trade-offs. A sharper spear was just better. A warmer cave was just better. But in today's world of engineered materials and complex technology, almost everything involves trade-offs, and we still haven't updated our expectations. So when you see a cracked screen, your brain doesn't think, this is the natural consequence of optimizing for scratch resistance. Your brain thinks, this is broken, someone messed up, I got a defective product. But that's not what's happening. You got exactly the product that was designed, You just didn't know what it was designed to do. But here's what nobody wants to admit. The phone companies could make a screen that never cracks. It would cost maybe an extra $20 per phone in materials. They could use laminated glass with plastic layers, like car windshields, or they could use much thicker glass, or they could use flexible OLED displays with plastic covers. But here's the uncomfortable truth. They don't do that because scratches sell more phones than cracks. Sounds cynical, right? But think about the math. When your screen cracks, you're annoyed. You might get it repaired if the crack is really bad, but usually you just live with it until your next upgrade. A cracked screen doesn't make your phone unusable. The touchscreen still works. You can still see everything. It's just ugly. But scratches are different. Scratches accumulate slowly. Every week, a few more tiny scratches appear, and within a year or two, your screen looks old and worn out. You can't unsee them. And that feeling of, my phone looks old, is one of the biggest drivers of upgrades. People don't want to carry around a phone that looks beat up. So the companies optimize for the thing that keeps your phone looking new, not the thing that keeps it structurally intact after drops. Because a phone that looks new but cracks when dropped still looks new right up until you drop it. But a phone that doesn't crack but scratches easily looks terrible within 6 months, even if you never drop it once. This is what the research actually shows. Corning surveys thousands of smartphone users every year, and consistently, people rank scratches as a bigger concern than cracks. Not because cracks aren't expensive or annoying, but because scratches are constant. They're always there, taunting you. What's actually happening is that phone screens are optimized for the average user experience, not the worst case scenario. The average user drops their phone a couple times a year, but they put it in their pocket dozens of times per day, so the daily wear matters more than the occasional drop. This isn't because phone companies are evil. It's because they're responding to what people actually complain about. And people complain way more about scratches than about drop durability. Even though repairs for cracked screens cost billions, the dissatisfaction from scratches is constant and universal. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. The next time you see someone with a cracked screen still using their phone like normal, that's the system working as designed. The screen sacrificed itself to protect against the scratches that would have made the phone feel worthless long before it actually broke. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus just got the new iPhone. He's super careful with it, keeps it in a slim case, never puts it in the same pocket as his keys, uses a microfiber cloth to clean it. 3 months in, his screen is pristine, not a scratch. He's so proud of how good it looks. Then one day, he's getting out of his car with a coffee in one hand and his phone in the other. The phone slips, falls onto the driveway, just a 3-foot drop, screen down, and when he picks it up, there's a massive crack running diagonally across the whole thing. Marcus is furious. He paid $1,200 for this phone. He's been so careful with it, and it breaks from one tiny drop. He goes into the Apple store ready to demand a replacement. This has to be defective glass, right? But here's what Marcus doesn't realize. His screen isn't defective. It's actually working perfectly. For 3 months, it survived constant microabrasions. His pocket fabric scraping against it thousands of times. His fingers swiping across it. The occasional grain of sand. His screen stayed flawless through all of that because it's incredibly hard. And that hardness, that same property that kept his screen looking brand new for 3 months, is exactly why it shattered from that one drop. The glass couldn't flex to absorb the impact, so all that energy had to go somewhere, and it went into creating that crack. Now compare that to Lisa. Lisa has the same phone, but Lisa knows about the hardness flexibility trade-off. She knows her screen is optimized for scratch resistance, which means it's vulnerable to impacts, so she uses a thick case with a raised lip that protects the screen. And she has Apple Care. 1 month in, Lisa drops her phone in a parking lot, same height as Marcus, but her case takes the impact. The raised lip means the screen never touches the ground. The case flexes, absorbs the energy, and the screen is fine. Lisa drops her phone probably once a month, but in 2 years of ownership, she's never cracked a screen. Meanwhile, her screen has a few tiny micro scratches that you can only see in direct sunlight. She doesn't even notice them most of the time. Notice how Lisa didn't have better luck or a better phone. She just understood what her screen was designed to do and protected it accordingly. Marcus was treating his screen like it was designed to be impact resistant when it was actually designed to be scratch resistant. And here's what happened. Marcus kept using his phone with the cracked screen for 18 months. Every time he looked at it, he was reminded that his premium phone broke easily. He told all his friends that iPhones are fragile and overpriced. His entire perception of the product quality shifted because of one drop. Lisa, meanwhile, thinks her phone is incredibly durable. It survived dozens of drops. The screen still looks almost perfect. She tells people iPhones are worth the money because they last forever. Same phone, completely different experiences, all because of understanding what the screen was actually optimized for. Here's what most people don't realize. The screen isn't trying to be indestructible. It's trying to look new for as long as possible. And those are very different design goals. An indestructible screen would need to be flexible. It would need to absorb impacts. It would probably use plastic or layered materials. But it would scratch. It would develop a haze. Within a year, it would look worn and old even though it still worked perfectly. But a screen designed to look new stays crystal clear. No scratches. Perfect clarity. Right up until the moment you drop it and it shatters. And phone companies have calculated that most people prefer a screen that looks pristine for 2 years and then cracks to a screen that survives, drops, but looks scratched and hazy after 6 months. It's not actually about durability at all. It's about perceived quality. And perceived quality is driven way more by how your phone looks every single day than by whether it survives the occasional drop. The people who succeed at keeping their screens intact don't have gentler hands or better luck. They understand this pattern. They know their screen is hard and brittle, designed to resist scratches but vulnerable to impacts, and they protect it accordingly. These patterns aren't personal failures. If your screen cracked, it's not because you're clumsy or careless. It's a predictable consequence of the material trade-offs that went into that screen. But now that you understand those trade-offs, you can work with them instead of against them. So here's what we've uncovered. Your phone screen is caught in an impossible trade-off between hardness and flexibility. Make it harder to prevent scratches and it becomes more brittle and prone to shattering. Make it more flexible to survive drops and it scratches instantly. Phone companies chose hardness. They chose scratch resistance because their data shows that's what keeps people happy with their phones day to day. A scratched screen makes your phone feel old and cheap every time you look at it. A cracked screen is frustrating when it happens, but you adapt. You keep using the phone. It still works. And remember the hardness trap? That's when we expect our screens to be both scratch-proof and shatter-proof without realizing those properties are physically opposed to each other. Plus, there's the uncomfortable truth that scratches actually drive more upgrade behavior than cracks, which means optimizing for scratch resistance isn't just about durability. It's about keeping your phone looking new until you're ready to upgrade. This all connects to the fundamental strength-ductility trade-off in materials science. You can't make something both incredibly hard and incredibly flexible at the molecular level. The structures are incompatible. So every phone screen is a compromise. And the compromise we got is a screen that laughs at your keys but can't survive a waist-high drop onto concrete. The question isn't whether you can make your screen indestructible. The question is whether you'll recognize what your screen is actually designed to do. Because now you know it's optimized for scratch resistance at the expense of impact resistance. You can't unknow it. So next time you pull your phone out of your pocket and the screen is still perfectly smooth despite months of abuse, that's your screen doing exactly what it was designed to do. And next time you see someone with a cracked screen, you'll know they're not looking at a failure of engineering. They're looking at the visible consequence of choosing scratch resistance over impact resistance. Because once you see how materials science forces these trade-offs, everything looks different. Your phone screen isn't trying to survive everything, it's trying to look new. And now you know the difference.